You're ready, give me the signal. Okay. Welcome again, everyone, to the soccer preseason webinar for coaches and everything. Tonight, we do have Melissa Anger, our sports director and staff liaison for the sport of soccer, Mike Sarnowski, our VP of sports, and myself, Steve Bennett, senior director of community sports and competition. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the agenda. And the first thing, again, welcome everyone. We definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules. But hopefully this at least gives if nothing else, gives a little social interaction with the whole COVID and the pandemic. So we will go over some of the basics of Zoom, which I'll do right now for you. This webinar will be recorded, by the way. We will have everyone on mute to begin with because of how many people are joining us to keep the background noise down to a minimum. We will have a couple questions and polls throughout. But if you do have a question, you'll see a toolbar most likely at the bottom of your screen. I've heard sometimes it is on the left of your screen. If you click on where you see participants, if you click on that, that will be able to give you where you can raise your hand to indicate that you have a question. You can also if we have any questions, we do a quick thing on the fly, click yes or no. There's also a chat button, and that's where you can type in question that you may have. We may also ask you several times throughout the webinar to insert answers to questions or provide some feedback, and you can do that through the chat as well. There may be times where, depending on where we are in the webinar, if you raise your hand, we may unmute you, or we may ask you to simply type your question into the chat function. So hopefully that's the basics of Zoom there. Also, the major part of the webinar tonight will be the return to activities, requirements and protocol that Mike Sarnowski will address. That'll pretty much, depending on Mike's quickness or what questions may come up, about 50 minutes to an hour. Then we will go into some sports-specific information that Melissa Anger will cover. A lot of information that her and the sports management team for soccer has come up with, some exciting stuff that I'm sure she's excited to share with you on behalf of the sport management team. So again, we appreciate you joining us. And with this, I will quit talking and turn it over to Mike Sarnowski to talk about the return to activities, requirements, and protocols.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending about 90 minutes of your evening with us. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard some things about the return to activity. Hopefully, all of you received the packet or the email with attachments that Melissa Anger sent out over the weekend. If you have not had a chance to read through the return to activities protocol, which looks like it's a PDF that was attached to the email. Please do take the time to go through that. We're going to highlight a number of things here in this session, and you certainly, I'm not sure if these exact slides have gone out yet, but they will go out following this with the link to the recording. But take the time to go through it, and if there's no other message that you get from tonight, is work with your area director. Your area director is the key person here in terms of determining when you start and how things are going moving forward, but really work with your area director on these things. And he or she can walk you through it. As it says there on the first bullet. The other, a lot of times we'll share recommendations and such. This is not one of them. This is what we're sharing tonight are requirements. That the only way, and these are nationwide requirements as well. We're adjusting slightly here for Maryland, but they're the same standard for that every state is required to follow in terms of starting back up the program. As we're going through here, we've seen this is, I think, the 7th or 8th session like this that we've done. And in each case, I think it's safe to say that there's some coaches who are not certain that they can operate the program with this, and that's okay. Not everyone necessarily is going to be ready to restart at this time. I would encourage you again, though, to speak with your area director and find out what support is available there going forward. But everything that's in here that we're talking about, all these protocols and all these processes, the screenings are absolutely required. Mentioned about the return to activities protocol. As is noted there, we're talking about all this. Don't forget that medicals, volunteer applications, certifications, et cetera, are still necessary in this period. It's very easy to focus in on this stuff, the new stuff, if you will, and forget that these other things are required. So please do be sure to stick with that. As we go through, it's a 3-phase plan that actually has 4 phases to it. The 4th phase, or the first phase, being phase 0, if you will, which is when no activity is going on. When you start up your activity, every program is starting in phase 1 and will progress from there based on the judgment from the area director, along with folks here at headquarters. Will work together to determine when a program can move from phase 1 into phase 2. And we'll share the phases and go over them in a moment. The other thing is just keep them, and this is an evolving process. We think things are fairly stable in terms of what the requirements are, and that won't be changing significantly, but it is certainly possible that there could be some changes. The best place to get the most recent information is that return to play or return to activity website, the link that's right there. And again, you'll get the slides, so you'll have that there. And I'm sure that Melissa has included that also in materials that have already gone out. For your athletes, there have been a series of webinars, the last one last night, that are run by athletes and sharing the basics of this with athletes. We strongly recommend that athletes and family members, potentially even coaches, take an opportunity and view these. They are not duplicates. They are a series of webinars that they build on each. The last one, the most recent one that was done last night, it was actually, I think, a Jeopardy game that kind of checked in and reviewed the material that was otherwise there. But they're very good, and the links to them are available at that return to play site. In addition, if there's some support that you need in terms of holding sessions or training your folks, work with your area director, and we can certainly look at opportunities to support that as well. One of the things that also that's come up that just to put into your mind or to be thinking about, we strongly recommend in advance of actually starting or restarting your program to have a web meeting with your coaches, maybe have a separate one with your coaches and one with your athletes and family members to go over what the expectations are so that they're better prepared when you arrive. And again, your area director, along with us at headquarters, can certainly assist you with that. You can do it as a Zoom meeting. Free version of Zoom gives you 40 minutes that you can do with that. If for some reason you think you need a longer period, again, we can work with your area director and see what we can arrange. So again, we talked about some of this. It's based on SOI. This covers not just your practices and any competitions that we may be able to hold, but all meetings, fundraising events, etc. I should say here, in case the word had not gotten to folks, Special Olympics Maryland has eliminated, based on feedback from the areas and just the situation of where things are and the protocols that we would need to follow as well, that we will not be holding any state level championships for our community program between now and the end of the year. That said, we absolutely want to, if we can, we absolutely want to hold competitions for each of the sports. They would be smaller. And so when Melissa goes through the different higher level skills opportunities, we'd love to work with an area or a couple areas to co-host some competition opportunities there and such. So just because we're not having state championships does not mean that we don't want to have competitions and that kind of an opportunity. Again, we may need, or not we may, we will need to follow the same protocols with that. Another thing, it's sort of up in the air. I don't think we'll know for sure until the middle of August what all the school systems are doing with respect to both opening, although it looks like I think close to half are already saying they're going to start off with virtual learning. But once that's decided, they'll be making decisions in terms of what their athletic programs and their interscholastic programs. As most of you know, Special Olympics Maryland has had a very robust interscholastic unified sports program in most of the state. There's a few counties that are doing something a little different than that. If those systems or if those programs are underway, if the school systems have their interscholastic program, they are going to be following the requirements of the school system, which may be different than what we're covering tonight. That's a potential point for confusion. But those programs, even though they're labeled and named Special Olympics and we work closely with them, they would be following the school system protocol. So just be prepared for that. You may have an athlete who is in the school system and doing their IUS program and also in your community program, and the standards are a little maybe different between the two. So just warning you ahead of time for that. And as I had said, no one is required to return to activity or return to action right away. Work that out with your area director, and we certainly would like to see as many programs as possible restart, provided they can do it safely and according to the protocol, and the coaches and athletes and family members feel comfortable in the situation. You may find, even if you start back up, that some athletes or some family members may not be comfortable, and that's okay. This is a unique situation, one we hope we never have to deal with again, but it's a sort of 1 in 100 years that we've been dealing with this, so keep that in mind. So again, I mentioned about the 3-phase program. Everyone's going to start in phase 1, the reddish box that's there, and the things that are key with that is that if you decide to resume, and again, work with your area director, your groups that are training within your program can't be any more than 10 people. Now, you could have more than one group at the same location as long as they are physically distant, like, I don't know, 20, 30 meters apart or so. But within that, each group, and counting towards that 10 is every athlete, every partner, every coach, every volunteer, even if family members come down there. If they're with that group and in that training area, they count towards that 10, towards that max. Everyone needs to be adhering to the physical distancing of 6 feet apart or more. And actually, someone suggested in a meeting we were in this morning, if you have pool noodles, they're usually about 4 feet or 5 feet long. Apparently, one of the programs that started up has used that as a visual. If you hold it out and hold the pool noodle out, that shows roughly 6 feet. It might be a little further than the 6 feet. That might serve as a nice visual for that. But anyhow, you need to adhere to that. No direct or indirect contact. Direct contact is when one person literally touches another person. So handshake, pat on the back, or when you're coaching, holding their hands to do a throw-in, or positioning their feet to properly kick or get a good stance with that. That's direct contact. Indirect contact is when a person touches an object and then another person touches that same object. During phase 1, neither direct nor indirect contact is permitted. Indirect contact, as long as you sanitize the object between the 2 touches, that's acceptable, but you can't have someone touch it and then another person. So an example with that would be in soccer, kicking a soccer ball. Well, I don't want to use that example because we have that on a pole. But kicking a soccer ball back and forth between 2 players, that's indirect contact. So in phase 1, that would not be permitted. So, or tossing the ball back and forth with that. If they're only touching it with their shoes, they're not touching it with their skin on that. And then also with that, no shared equipment. And event screening, pre-event screening must take place. We'll talk through the pre-screening in just a minute, but that applies there. For phase 2, it's very similar to phase 1. However, you can have groups of up to 50 people, still need the physical distancing. No direct contact is permitted, but indirect contact is allowed in phase 2. And again, you're doing the screening that's there. And then finally in phase 3, that's when everything essentially is lifted. So any competitions that we might be hosting wouldn't be until we're in phase 2. It's just not realistic. And that's for any sport there. But everyone here, when you start off, you're going to start off in phase 1. And then after you've been there for at least 2 weeks or so, your area director, along with someone from headquarters, will determine whether things are going well enough and consistently enough that you can potentially move up to phase 2. So with that in mind, let's start off with Steve with our first poll. If you want to pop that up. So look down the list here and check off any of the things that are listed here that a program would be permitted to do when they're in phase 1. So again, phase 1, which of those would be permitted? After you've read through them and checked off the ones that would be permitted, be sure to hit the submit button at the bottom. And Steve, we're looking for about 25, give or take, responses.
I might have missed it, but just again, remember at the end to hit submit at the bottom so that we get the results coming in.
Okay, Steve, let's give it another 15 seconds or so. We're getting up to close to that 25. Okay, and let's see what we got. Okay, so looks like folks did really well. Nice job. So coach physically moving the arm, an athlete's arm through the motion would not be. That's direct contact. Handing the equipment to the athletes and so on down the line doesn't say anything about sanitizing between it, so that would not be permitted in phase 1 because that's indirect contact. Demonstrating the proper form from 8 feet away, perfectly fine. Using poly spots, and recommend using those again. Those are the kind of rubberized circular color things that you can throw down to mark a spot. That gives athletes a really good, and non-athletes too, a really good visual marker of where they should be. Throwing a football back and forth from a distance, doesn't matter how far apart they are, that's indirect contact again because they're each touching the football, and that's not permitted in phase 1. Soccer players that are an open goal, perfect. Yes, that would be perfectly permitted. Putting a goalie in there, it doesn't matter if it's an assistant coach, an athlete, or whatever, that'll result in indirect contact and would not be permitted in phase 1. So cool. So Steve, why don't we launch the second poll for here, just to check. Okay. And here again, it's check off as many. Check off on here, who is included in the maximum allowed group size at any given phase. Okay. Whether we're talking phase 1 when it's 10, phase 2 when it's 50, and actually phase 2 can be graduated up after a certain period, but to larger numbers. But who is counted towards that? Okay. Good, let's give another 15 seconds or so.
About 17, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Okay. Okay. And let's go ahead and close her and see what we got. Okay. So it looks like we did pretty well here. Yes, absolutely. The first 5 athletes, unified partners, assistant coaches, head coaches, and volunteers at that training space, all of them absolutely would be counted towards that total. It's not just the number of athletes, it's anybody who's down there in that area where you're training. If family, and then also families of the next to the last one would also be included. A family member comes down to that training area, they count towards that total. However, as you see the other 2, the family member stays in their car in the parking lot, that doesn't count towards the 10. They're not really near down there unless they park the car in the middle of your training space. They're not in that area, and that's fine. And then also, it's also fine if they're 50 meters away. I mean, I pulled 50 meters out of the air, but if they're a good distance away and observing, sitting in their lawn chairs, drinking their iced tea, that's fine. They're not counted. They're not right there in any of the area where stuff could be exchanged. So great. Thank you, Steve. Let's go ahead and close that and moving on. So here on these next 2 slides, I'm not going to read all this to you. These are included in your return to protocol. I added a couple little things in here, but essentially everything's in there. The comply row, again, read this on your own, but it just reminds you of who you need, what standards you need to comply to, local and national or local and state regulations, as well as the Special Olympics ones. And whichever one of those is more restrictive is what you need to follow. Right now, the Special Olympics protocol is more restrictive than the state of Maryland protocols are. So you need to follow them. It is possible, I guess, that the state of Maryland protocol may become more restrictive. I don't know if they decide to shut down or reduce the group size. Let's say you're up in phase 2 and you're at 50, and the state government, for whatever reason, decides to cut that down to groups of no more than 25. We need to follow that more restrictive number at that point. The educate row, read through this on your own, but this is all things to educate you or share with your folks prior to attending or prior to your first practice. And when I say participants, we're talking not just your athletes and unified partners and family members, but also your volunteers, your coaches and such, because they're going to be required to meet these same standards. Particularly share with them the concerns about high risk. We'll talk through those in a minute and such. Also, as I had mentioned, strongly recommend having an online meeting. Yes, we recognize not every athlete, every volunteer, et cetera, can join a Zoom meeting, but you'll get most of them and can share that. And since that's a heck of a lot easier than trying to physically convene folks, particularly with the restrictions, that's the best way to go. And then you can actually, during this period, have them complete what's called, what we're calling the Acknowledgement of Risk form. We'll talk about that in a bit, but everybody, before they can start to participate again, needs to complete and submit an Acknowledgement of Risk form. You can email those out and get them back and have them ready for your first practice. And then here, the prepare goes through in detail what the things that you should do to prepare for this. Make sure you have the screening protocol and the screening materials in place. Distribute those Acknowledgement of Risk forms, and again, we'll talk about them. Look at your facility. One of the things, and you should be, at this point in time, really everything should be outside. I recommend, even if you've been using the same facility for the last 10, 15 years, make a special trip out there, potentially with other coaches, and look at it from the perspective of these new requirements. How are you going to lay things out? Where are you going to put your screening area? Where, if you're having more than one group, where is one going to be, and where is the other going to be to keep things separated, and so on. If you've never looked at your facility from that perspective, it can be extremely helpful to do that. It's worth the trip. And then just reminders and such to give to your folks. Then on site, the activity, just reminders there of complying with the distancing guidelines and so on. And I should point out the distancing guidelines and the direct contact in particular, are likely to be challenging for a number of athletes. We'll see some videos in a moment, and they were shot, actually they feature Special Olympics Maryland athletes. You'll recognize some of them, but we did that to support the national program as well. And in doing that video shoot, several athletes had a lot of difficulty not coming up and shaking hands, not coming up and doing a high five or a fist bump, and got a little upset when they were reminded that they can't do that at this point in time. So just be prepared for that kind of an emotional reaction. And talk through, that's a great thing to discuss with your coaches and to talk with your athletes about at that preseason Zoom meeting that you'll have with folks. So fingers crossed. Sorry, we had an issue with the videos at the last one. So it looks like we're good.
In order to safely return to activity, Special Olympics recommends that participants wear a mask if on public transport, such as a bus, trolley, subway, or if carpooling with someone not living with them. If Special Olympics is providing transportation, face masks during travel and maintaining physical distance are required. Prior to entering any activity, practice, event, or gathering, all athletes, coaches, unified partners, volunteers, family members, and caregivers must participate in an on-site screening. It is important to take the necessary steps to create a safe on-site screening area. 1. Create a single point of entry. One entryway that allows participants to enter one at a time. Remember, we strongly advise outdoor spaces only in Phase 1. 2. Use chalk, tape, cones, or other markers to indicate what 6 feet or 2 meters looks like for physical distancing. 3. Make sure you have all the necessary supplies for a proper screening, which include temporal thermometer, pens, masks, gloves, disinfectant wipes or spray, hand sanitizer, COVID-19 participant code of conduct, and risk assessment forms. Volunteers will fill out a monitoring form for each participant that passes through screening. The form includes the participant's name, contact info, temperature, answers to screening questions, and the outcome of the screening. For instance, can they participate, or have they been isolated and sent home? Next, you will ask each participant the following required screening questions. We recommend using visual aids when asking the questions. 1. In the last 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID-19? 2. Have you had a fever in the last week? Temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius, or higher? 3. Do you have a cough and or difficulty breathing? 4. Do you have any other signs or new symptoms of COVID-19? Fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or diarrhea?
In the past 14 days, have you had contact with someone who has been sick with COVID?
Yes.
Yes, you have? Okay, so I'm gonna actually have you step down here.
If a participant answers yes to any questions, they must be isolated from the group, sent home, and instructed to contact their healthcare provider. Participants who are found to have COVID-19 symptoms must wait 7 days after symptoms resolve to return to activity, or must provide written proof of physician clearance to Special Olympics to return to activities. Participants who test positive or have COVID-19 must provide written medical clearance before returning to sport and fitness activities. After answering the screening questions, you will conduct on-site measurement of participants' temperatures using a thermometer, preferably a non-touch thermal scanning one if possible. If a thermometer is not available, you must ask participants to self-monitor and provide results of that monitoring. If there are any concerns about fever, temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.8 degrees Celsius or higher, the participant should not be allowed to remain on site. If high, you may retest the participant after 5 minutes to ensure temperature is accurate. Record all names, results, and contact information using the template provided, and keep in case needed for contact tracing or reporting. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity Protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Okay. Sorry about the audio there. Those of you who didn't just have your volume turned down, that is. So, hi, Scott. How you doing? So, anyway, so there's the 4 questions. You do need to ask each individual as they come through. One clarification, and it's not stated in the video there, but a clarification. If cough or difficulty breathing or any of these symptoms here are known to be due to a chronic condition the individual has, asthma, arthritis, allergies. I have a chronic sinus condition as an example. I always have congestion. That doesn't count here. It's only if it's something new. So if you know that it's a chronic condition, and they say, yes, I've got I don't have any, taste or smell, then, that if they're never going to have taste or smell, then, they're not counted in this. So, but anyhow, once they go through those, you then do the temperature check. If it's above 100.4 Fahrenheit, then you let them rest. They might have gotten overheated walking from the parking lot or from the area. And let them cool down and then try it again. One of the things also recommended here is where you lay out or where you place the pre-screening area, recommended to do it as close to the parking lot as is feasible for a couple reasons. One, if there's an issue, the athlete can, in theory at least, go right back into their car and go home if they need to depart. And I should say we have had, I forget where the location was, we have had one individual, it was a coach, who had to be turned away because of a high temperature. So it does happen. But anyhow, having it near the parking lot can be helpful with that. So, and again, all the questions need to be no with the caveat that I mentioned. Steve, why don't we toss up that last poll? Thank you. And here, just look down your the list there and check off all of the statements that are true. Okay. Read through them and again hit that submit button. I see in the chat that some folks may, at least on the previous polls, may not have been seeing them. I'm not sure how to help you on that. I apologize. It may be that you have something in front of it, like either the try moving if you have the participant list open or the chat box open. Try moving them, and that might help you. Okay, Steve, we got about 17, 18. Let's give him another few seconds. And let's go and see what she wrote. Okay, so hopefully folks can see the results there, and great job. So person answers 3 questions, no. If they answer, answers 3 of the questions no, they have to answer all 4 no in order to move on to the pre-screening, with the caveat that it's a chronic, if it's a chronic condition. We're not counting that as a no answer. And same thing goes that it's not just athletes and partners who need to be screened. Everyone needs to be screened. In fact, the first thing that your screeners should do is screen the other screeners at the beginning, the very beginning there, because they need to be screened as well. If I come out there, I need to be screened. Jeff comes out, anything, everybody needs to be screened. And then all the others are true. 104, they can be retested, the no-touch thermometer, and again, keep it near the parking area. And one of the things that came in questions about the Special Olympics headquarters, or Special Olympics Maryland headquarters, is providing free of charge every area 2 no-touch thermometers and gloves. We also have a number of other materials that can be procured, and work with your area director for this. It is not the expectation that the individual coach would be paying for and purchasing these. Certainly if you want to do that as a donation, that's fine. But work with your area director for that in terms of the materials that are available. Okay, thanks. You can go ahead and close that, Steve. And so I mentioned some of this about the phased-in approach. And okay, I just noticed a typo that's been here for 9 sessions. It's the following state and local guidelines, not SATE. And again, use the grid, whichever is most restrictive. We'll work with your area director, your area leadership in terms of determining phases and transitioning. And then also, as is noted there, this is going to happen, or those kind of transitions between phases will be based on, or will be on an area by area basis. There may be some, it may be that Harford County is in phase 2, but Prince George's County is in phase 1, either because they started at different times, or there may be some challenges that one may be experiencing as opposed to the other. But again, that'll be on an area by area basis. There we go. Thanks. If there's a failed screening, again, they must be isolated and sent home and instructed to contact their healthcare provider. This next bullet is confusingly stated. I apologize, but that's how it is. Essentially, if they are found, if they answered yes to any of those questions, they need to wait 7 days after they've been symptom-free for 7 consecutive days. Effectively 14 days, consecutive days symptom-free. Or they can go to a doctor or physician, a medical professional, and get clearance that they're okay, they don't have COVID-19, and so on down the line. If they do get tested, actually tested, and are found to have COVID-19, they need a written medical clearance before they can return to any activities and turn those in. The acknowledgement of risk forms. So we'll talk through, I'll show you the forms in just a minute. I think Melissa either sent them as a separate document in the packet the other night. They're also included in that larger packet. They're also available to download from the coach resource page as a standalone document there. Everyone must complete them and fill them out. Again, including me, no one is exempt. If Jim Schmutz goes to an event, he needs to have completed one ahead of time before he did that, or before he goes. It acknowledges, or it talks through folks who may be in high-risk situations and the risks involved, and that if they can't conform to the requirements in that the social distancing, the no direct or indirect, or depending upon the phase that you're in, touching, that they may need to leave. And you're empowered to do that. We certainly, we need to be safe for everyone. Not saying if an athlete violates that one time, they're immediately dismissed. But if it's repetitive, 2 or 3 times, need to have that kind of consideration. If you have any qualms about that, talk to your area director. Again, your area director is highly empowered here. So again, one signed document, we'll be submitting them. I have a thing going out before our area director meeting tomorrow night that'll detail for areas how to submit them. It's essentially the same process that you would do to submit a medical form if you had one turned in at your program, or a volunteer application if that was turned in at your program. It's essentially the same thing. It's just one other folder that they'll dump them into. And we're also putting all of these into a database. So talk to your area director. They'll tell you who you give it to or who you email it to, so on down the line. In theory, or in general, these acknowledgement of risk forms, or there's a couple other names that are used, but these are the same forms. They don't expire. That is the intention right now. We don't anticipate that changing. There is one exception, and that is if the person, the athlete or the volunteer, is a minor under the age of 18, It's essentially their parent or guardian who's filling out the form. When they become an adult on their 18th birthday, they need to fill it out again, because then it's them acknowledging the risk as opposed to their parent or guardian doing so. Other than that, they don't expire. And then when they fill it out as an adult, then that one won't expire. Again, it is a bit of a fluid situation. In theory, it's possible that could change. We don't anticipate that happening. This is the 2 pages of the form. The one on the left goes through the listing of things that they're agreeing to. You know, washing their hands for 20 seconds, not share drinking bottles, so on down the line. You can, I don't expect you to read this on the screen right now, but you have them in the handout that you've got already. The page on the right, the acknowledgement of risk, page 2, is what we really need. We don't need all the other pages with this. Just, you can scan and send that back in. Again, with either the participant signature, if it's an adult athlete who is his or her own guardian, or an adult volunteer, so on down the line, or signed by the parent or guardian for minors or anyone who is not their own guardian. And again, they're available there at those locations to send in. The first page of the form, which is all just text, we don't need that back. It goes through and describes high risk or folks who could be in high risk categories, including 65 years or older, or living in a nursing home or long-term care facility. That has been determined to also mean a group home. So if they're living in a group home, they fall into that category and are in a high risk. And then also these other medical situations could put folks in the high risk category. Special Olympics Maryland is not banning anyone who's in a high risk category from participating. We are saying they really should think about it and know the risks that they're taking, and they decide on their own as to whether they're going to participate or with their guardian. It's effectively a civil rights issue, we believe. So as long as they are aware, and this process should take care of that. If they choose to participate, that's great. That said, if anyone chooses not to participate, and I include anybody on this call, that's fine. No one is going to think ill of you. I'll be honest, I can check off several of those items on the right-hand side of the screen. That would put me in the category of high risk. So people need to make their own personal decision. That's why, again, we said not every program may be ready to start back up. Not every athlete, not every volunteer may be able to participate at this stage, and that's okay. Need to make the best decisions. On the video, it showed a log that was filled out. You must use the log that we provide. I believe it was included in what Melissa sent out. It's also available on the coach resource page and other pages there. You can go through in advance and pre-populate at least these first 3 columns. If you know the names of all the people, what their role is, and contact information. Contact information is so that it's readily available should you need to do follow-up for any kind of contact tracing. Once you know that you have the acknowledgement form, you can also pre-populate that. And then for each practice, you can do that, print out the form. You can just go through and indicate yes or no, whether they completed the screening. Obviously, if the answer was no, they would need to depart. And then also whether they have signs or symptoms. In that case, if they do, they would need to depart as well. It needs to do it before each session and event. And remember again that you're doing the temperature, so this isn't something they can email to you ahead of time. The forms need to be emailed in, scanned and emailed in to Special Olympics Maryland headquarters. Work out with your area leader how you'll go about that and what the handoff process is for that. And again, it's the form is available in the packet. Another thing that we have done, and this is a special situation that Special Olympics International has given to us, not just Maryland, but all the states. We have, because folks reportedly have had difficulty arranging for medical examinations and for physicals and that type of thing, during the last many months. We are doing a bulk extension, if you will, of any medical that either had expired or will have expired between March 15th of this year and September 29th. They've all been advanced and have a medical expiration date now of September 30th. That has all been updated in GMS, in our computer system that your area all has access to. It only applies to this window. If their medical expired on February 28th, doesn't apply to them, it's still expired. If it expires on October 4th, it's still expired. There's no extension with that. It also doesn't apply to any new athletes who haven't submitted a medical. As we said way back at the beginning, all those same standards in terms of their forms still apply. No one can start to participate without a valid medical or a volunteer screening. So, and then this also doesn't apply to volunteer certifications. The rationale behind that is you don't have to create or arrange for a doctor's appointment to do your volunteer certifications. So, fingers crossed. Living a charmed life. Okay. Sorry, the videos don't always work.
Preparing the venue to safely welcome Special Olympics participants is vital for return to activity for phases 1 and 2. Arrive early to prepare the space. Start by ensuring the venue is disinfected or sanitized, especially the bathrooms and other high-touch areas. Wear disposable gloves for all tasks in the cleaning process, including the handling of trash. After sanitizing the space, set up signage that reinforces proper hygiene procedures, physical distancing, and wearing personal protective equipment, or PPE. Post signs in easy-to-understand language with visual cues in highly visible locations, like entrances and restrooms. The signs should describe how to stop the spread of germs by properly washing hands, following physical distancing guidelines, and explaining how to properly wear a cloth face covering. Also, make sure hand sanitizer and/or hand washing facilities or stations are available. Lastly, set up a single entry with screening and a single exit area, which means there should be one entrance into the venue and one exit out of the venue that allows participants to be at least 2 meters or 6 feet apart. For more information on Special Olympics return to activity protocol and safety guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Should also say that all of these videos that we're watching are available on that Return to Play website that Special Olympics Maryland has put forward. Also, when you get the slide deck, the little link at the bottom right corner links directly to those videos, and that should work if you're looking at this electronically in a PDF. Obviously, if you print it out, that won't work. But you can click on it and you can see the video and folks can watch that. So the PPE, make sure you have those items in hand. Every participant should be bringing their own masks. We say have masks available so that if someone forgets it, or it's in theory possible that they get soiled or somehow otherwise damaged and need to get replaced, so on. We're providing, again, 2 thermometers, 2 no-touch thermometers, and a box of gloves. We also have Rhonda Garrison, many of you know Rhonda, has procured, she started doing this a couple months ago, procured a lot of these materials, so we have a stockpile that your area director can request additionals of. Don't, coaches as individuals, unless you're also an area director, don't be calling, asking for this. It's all going to be channeled through the area director. In many cases, the area director may already have his or her own stockpile for their program, so go through that. Read through this at your leisure. Again, this is all pulled directly from the return to protocol or return to activity. In summary, athletes and unified teammates or anybody who's participating need to have their mask on when they aren't competing up until the point, so they arrive, they're wearing their mask. They're checking in, so on down the line. Once they start actual physical activity, such as your warm-ups, your stretches, that type of thing, they can take their mask off. Please don't collect them because then you've cross-contaminated them all. But you can, if they have, most cases they're going to have a bag or something, they can put them in that. and they can leave them off until they are no longer participating. The session's over, you've done your cool downs, and so on down the line. And then again, reminding they need to be 6 feet apart. Coaches and sport volunteers, for the most part, you should have your masks on throughout the entire practice, unless you yourself are involved with the physical activity. So if you are, I'm not sure, if you're leading a group 6 feet apart from each other, dribbling the ball to do a little warm-up lap, you're participating in the activity, you can take it off. If you're, and you can leave it off until you stop doing the activity yourself. Basically, anybody, when they're participating in activity, can take them off. If you're just doing instruction, so on down the line, then you should have your mask on throughout that. And then your non-sport volunteers, the ones who are doing your check-in or doing anything where they're not actively or actually engaged with the sport part of your program, should have their masks on for the duration. Okay, don't want to jinx it. 3 for 3.
As a coach, you have a critical role in ensuring the safety of your participants. It is necessary to adapt some of your coaching strategies to lead safe practices under Special Olympics' new return to activity guidelines.
Sorry, to increase the volume, I have to pause it for a second.
Before each activity, communicate the need for high-risk individuals to participate at home, and have all participants complete the COVID-19 Participant Code of Conduct and Risk Assessment forms. Forms may be tracked in GMS if the program would like. During practice, it is important to maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet or 2 meters between all participants. To do this, place markers on the ground to indicate what 6 feet is, and have extra volunteers to remind participants to maintain their distance. We know it is difficult, but to ensure the safety of everyone participating, there are no fist bumps, high fives, hugs, or huddles right now during this COVID-19 pandemic. You can still support your friends and teammates by cheering each other on. All participants should come to the activity with their own supplies and cannot share masks, water bottles, towels, or uniforms. In Phase 2, the use of shared equipment is allowed, but should be limited. All equipment will be disinfected between each use. Wear face masks throughout activities, including arrivals and departures. Do not touch the outside of the mask. Do not scratch or touch your face. Masks do not need to be worn during active exercise. However, if sneezing, coughing, or yawning without a face mask on, participants should cover their faces with a tissue or elbow, not their hands, and throw away any tissues and wash their hands immediately. Throughout the activity, use verbal and visual signs to remind participants about hygiene, standard infection prevention, physical distancing, and use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. For more information on Special Olympics Return to Activity Protocol and Safety Guidelines, visit resources.specialolympics.org or consult your local program.
Thanks. So with that, just because this question has come up a couple times, in the videos, all the face masks are the ones that kind of wrap around the face here. Gaiters, they're if you watch Survivor, they're like a buff, but they go around your neck and you can pull them up. Those are fine as well. What's not fine is they can't just take their shirt and hold it up over their face or anything like that. But gaiters, other masks, they're all okay as far as that goes. I can't imagine anyone would do this, but a face shield, a plastic face shield without a face mask is not acceptable. It's not, it has some benefit, but it's not covering the breathing area we go around it. So mentioned about the webinars that we, and the links were on the other page way back when. We are looking, and SOI is looking with the national governing bodies to find some additional opportunities or suggestions on a sports-specific basis. We'll certainly share those as we have them. And then Sam Boyd from our office, who handles volunteers in the coordination of them, is doing some orientations, also has done some specific orientations for the screeners and such. So if that would be of value to you, we can either give you a link or can potentially arrange to do a training to meet your needs. So what we'd like to do before we hand off to Melissa is, so we talked about all this. The intent here is not to scare anybody, not to dissuade anybody from doing things or from having their training program start up, provided your area director agrees that it's a wise move to do. But it certainly is going to trigger, hopefully trigger lots of questions of, okay, what can we do? How can we do things? It certainly means that you're going to have to do things differently. So I'd like to ask, just to kind of trigger or prompt some thoughts here. What are some implications when the requirement, and this is both phase 1 and phase 2, of social distancing, that people need to stay 6 feet apart? That includes the coaches as well as the volunteers and the athletes. You need to stay 6 feet apart. What are some implications for that, for your training program? What might you need to do differently? And we can kind of think through some ways that might be able to work. And if you could use, just type some stuff into the chat box in terms of, just think about that. You're all of you who are soccer coaches are going to, if you start up your program, when you start up your program, we'll need to be thinking through these. What would you need to do differently? Okay, and again, just type it into the chat. And okay, so Kara's saying we need to use more space for each practicing team. Right, that old, what was it, the 9 square or whatever that you could do in other situations and train for soccer. It's too tight there. You do need to spread out some. Okay, focus on individual skills, right, Bob? That's one of the things Melissa will talk through here. Realistically, we're not going to be able to have any kind of a team competition or team play even in your practices until we get to phase 3. There's just no way between the social distancing and the direct or indirect contact to do it otherwise with that. Okay. See, Todd, designing plans that reinforce team skills without, and that would be a challenge. I'm not sure exactly what some options are for that. We can talk through that. Scott's right. Yep, it's going to require constant monitoring and reminding the athletes. And that's where I think to some degree, it's not going to solve the problem, but having that conversation ahead of time before they get there can help. Again, it's not going to solve it, but yeah, so you still will have, as Scott indicated, that constant monitoring. No sharing of enclosed fields. I guess depends upon how big they are with the fields there. I mean, in theory, I would think if you're in adjacent fields, that's probably far enough apart. If you're in a full-size soccer field at opposite ends and you stay at opposite ends as separate groups, that might work as well. But yeah, so we, Melissa and myself, I think the sports management team came up with a couple things here, and this is just with social distancing. Again, no games. It's hard to practice defense with this, even in phase 2. And again, some folks may be unhappy with the situation. I'm not discounting anything. This next one is just another way to kind of get folks thinking. So we talked about social distancing. What about issues that you need to do differently with no indirect or direct contact in phase 1? And then again, no direct contact in phase 2. But what does that make you think of something different? And again, the whole purpose here is let's think through this stuff before you get on site, before you have your athletes showing up.
And as we're typing into this, we do have some more that are coming back from the situations and what adaptations people might need to do. And yeah, there was a suggestion I'd give each athlete their own ball and practice the skills. And the athlete, if they're the only one touching that ball, especially in phase one, they can retrieve it and redo it. That's fine. Have more assistants and people to help. Absolutely. If you're a coach and you have an assistant, you have a roster of 10 or 12 people, you're going to have to divide that team into two and have big distance in between those groups. So you can't have one big group of your 10 athletes and a coach. That violates the 10 or less people. So more assistants or splitting the teams into two. So yeah, a lot of good things. But again, these are the thoughts that we need to start generating and thinking about.
Okay. Yeah, Scott's point there of running through, of keeping them distance. It may be if they're huffing and puffing, you have to shift from 6 feet to 8 feet or something like that. Again, kind of play it by ear. Nancy's idea of using maybe even smaller groups, but with assistance, maybe working there. Again, if there are a smaller number of people, it can help. And I think, again, with some of the skills, and kudos to the sports management team for soccer who came up with these, I think that's something that could work well. Okay, some other thoughts that came up with this, again, be creative. No goalie, and at least initially until you get into the no direct contact, only use feet, hands, and so on down the line. Let's see, and then just as another trigger, how would you work on dribbling with pressure? Is there a way to do that? Practicing penalty kicks. What might be a creative way to practice penalty kicks without a goalie? Sports management team came up with one and actually converted it into a skill station. Melissa, you want to share, or do you not know what I'm talking about? Sorry. So you'll see with the skill stations, but it's by focusing in on kicking towards the corners of the goals. That, I mean, typically your goalie, when you're doing penalty kicks, is going to stand in the middle. So if your athletes are working on shooting at the corners, that can help. It's not the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I've been coached soccer for a couple of years, but have coached it overall for 25 years or so. Yeah, I know there's a challenge there. Kathy's suggesting putting cones in the goal. Yep, yeah, that's right on target. It's not the only solution, but that's the solution that or option that the sports management team came up with. Oh yeah, Nancy, flag football is using large blow-ups to simulate other players. So potentially with that could be, in terms of avoiding an opposing player, that could be something along those lines. Todd asked, is it allowable to have family members interact with their athletes? If they are registered volunteers and they have gone through the screening and they're included in that total of up to 10 or up to 50 when you're in phase 2, and it's something that your program allows, then sure. Again, as a coach, I have a number of my track program. I would say 80% of our assistant coaches are family members or other volunteers. That's absolutely appropriate there. That said, there may be some family members who might not be appropriate in that situation. I'll leave that to your judgment. But again, work with your area director around what's appropriate or not in that situation. So, and then Melissa popped in the flag football. So anyway, the point being is that we've got an amazing amount of brain power here with all these coaches. One of the things I'll just toss out that I know golf is doing and some other sports are doing, and if it's of interest to the soccer coaches, Melissa can work this out, but is offering totally optional once every couple weeks the opportunity to just get together and share actually conversing here. There's too many people at the moment to do it this way. Hey, I've got this problem, or, I'm trying to think through, I can't think of a solution of how to do X, and having that opportunity to just share it and use the brain power of the other coaches that are there. So if that's something that would be valuable, completely optional. That's certainly something that we can coordinate and such. So that's one of the great things about Special Olympics, I think, while yes, we have good competition and you want to win, but just working together and really seeing the benefit of and getting the joy out of helping another coach improve on their team is a big thing with that. So Kathy's asking the clarification, is shoe-to-shoe contact considered indirect? It is my understanding, I'll clarify to confirm that. It is, I believe that it is not shoe-to-shoe. The question then comes in, I'm sure, is going to, well, what about with the goalie and the in there? The problem with that is the goalie, by his or her very nature, is going to have skin contact, even if they're wearing gloves, even if they're wearing goalie shirts, so on down the line. And the likelihood of the ball then coming in contact with skin on the other side is much higher. So that's the rationale with that. Again, we can talk through, there might be something to think about with that. But the reality is, we just need to be as prudent and as safe as possible. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. So, and again, we're trying to figure some of this stuff out ourselves. So that said, I'm going to put myself on mute, and Melissa, you want to take over from here?
Great, thanks, Mike. And sorry about earlier, I was about to talk and then I couldn't unmute myself. Took a second. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. I know all this is a lot of information, but we appreciate this. If you need to, I'll send out the recording with the follow-up email in the next day or two. So please re-listen to it, re-watch everything. But I'm really excited to talk about the high-level skills competition that the sports management team came up with. But just a reminder at first, before we get started on that, absolutely, positively, no athlete or volunteer may participate in any manner in a Special Olympics event without a valid and current medical form. I mean, you guys see this on every webinar, but even though we're not playing games, they're still considered training with Special Olympics Maryland in the program. Still have to have all the correct and up-to-date valid paperwork for everyone involved. No exceptions to this. The deadlines, obviously you guys are used to having a bunch of different deadlines for each sport. For soccer, we're using the same date as for the Fall Fest sports, which is October 1st. So please have all paperwork in by October 1st. Each athlete and volunteer, coach, unified partner, all of their paperwork must be up to date and valid through October 31st to be able to participate. If it expires October 29th, they have to have a new and valid medical volunteer application, whatever paperwork they need, prior to 10/1. If it expires before 10/1, they need to have it before, they need to have something valid before they even step onto the field and start the training, the trainings with you guys. So please make sure all paperwork is up to date. This is very important. Make sure it all gets into the state office via your either GMS coordinator or area director, however your county handles that. You guys have seen this in different forms. The biggest thing is every single person, no matter what level, must have the Acknowledgement of Risk form. This just states what each person needs for the correct certifications. As you guys see in red, Acknowledgement of Risk form is every single person. I was out of flag football last week doing some videos. I filled one out. So we're not exempt as staff. Every single person that's there has to fill one out. This is just, I know you guys are used to my big crazy team assessment forms. This is kind of just a watered down version. What we're gonna do is merge this with the individual skills score sheet. So you only have to send in your roster once and not have to worry about 2 different forms. So this is kind of an example of what our individual skills typically have, but we will make sure I'll combine the 2 so you don't have to fill out the 1. And Scott just sent in a question asking if I'll send out noting certification and expiration dates. I can definitely do that. With everything that's happened, it's been a little crazy, so I apologize that we haven't gotten that out yet. But
yeah, I can also tell you though, if you go to the coaches resource page, all the reports that we put up there that have the trainings that every coach has taken and the sports certifications, those are all listed there and are up to date through last Saturday. And we haven't gotten any more trainings in from that. That wouldn't include people who are who haven't done any trainings in terms of coach trainings and such, but it would have for many of your folks. Also, your area director or your area GMS person can run those reports. So I would be shocked, Scott, if Jeff has not already run them and has some in triplicate already for St. Mary's County.
So, what you guys have all been waiting for. The sports management team really worked hard on creating these new high-level skills for you guys. So we're still, if people are interested, we're still going to hold the typical individual skills that are in the rule book. These are for those athletes that are higher ability than the individual skills, that can play the team game, put them through these instead of the lower original individual skills. So we're going to go through these, but just keep in mind, please, that they're still in development. I'm working with my sports management team, and we're going to get a couple athletes together and videotape these, go through these, demo them. So what we go through tonight is just a draft. When we go through them with some of the athletes, we might see that something didn't work, so we might need to change it. We're going to keep the same concept, and these are the skills, but some of the things that we're going to be doing might just be a little different when you receive these later. Just keep that in mind, please.
And again, since we can't have games, the intention is to co-host, and headquarters will work with areas to co-host competitions along these skills, as well as the more traditional skills that are there. So we would like to have some type of a competitive experience for folks.
Yeah, and I can talk about this now. So one thing that we thought would be fun as a sports management team is having an ongoing, I guess you can say, up-to-date collection of all the scores that have come in and putting them on the soccer coaches resource page, so that the athletes can go on there and be like, oh, Sarah from Montgomery County did this, I want to beat them, or whatever. So they can still see, even though they might not be together, they can see everyone's scores. Once they're sent in to me, I'll update them so that we can kind of keep a running tally of the count of all the athletes that participate, make it that kind of the competitiveness is still there, even though they're not playing games. So hot shot shooting. Please excuse my diagrams. I worked very hard on them, but they might not all be the best, and they're definitely not to scale at all. So bear with me on these. Hot shot shooting, it's just like basketball. I always go back to that because that's the biggest sport I know. Athlete will start with a ball. They, from kind of like the midfield where Mike is, has his mouse, they get to go to any spot they want. As long as they're on one of the spots, that's how many points they get if they score the goal. After they score, or after they shoot, the ball feeder will pass another ball between the 10 and 5 point area, and the athlete can dribble to any spot they want. So they can go to the 10-point spot the entire time, but they have 1 minute to score as many points as they can. They get one ball at a time, and it's up to them to decide which spots they go to. So if they want to all go to the 1-point spot, that's completely fine. It's up to the athlete, and however many points they get for scoring, that's their total score at the end of the minute. So if someone shoots 5 times from the 5 points, that's how many points they get. 5 times 5, 25. So they get 25 points for that round. So as I said, each player gets 1 minute to score as many points as possible. The player will receive the ball from the feeder, after each shot. They don't have to worry about getting their own rebound. Okay, this is one thing they don't have to worry about. That's why there's 3 volunteers retrieving the balls behind the net or in the net. But the volunteers and the feeder need to be very careful that they're only using their feet to touch the balls. So if someone overshoots the goal, one of the volunteers will go get it. They have to dribble the ball with their feet, not touching it with their hands at all, giving it to the feeder. The feeder will start with 5 balls. Those 5 are going to go very quick. So we have to make sure the volunteers in the back that are retrieving them are getting them back to the feeder as quick as possible with their feet only for phase 1, since with the indirect contact. The next one is a dribbling. Keeping control of the dribble. Again, diagram is definitely not to scale. They will zigzag through the first 20 meters. So these cones are every 2 meters apart in the first lane. In the second lane, they'll keep the ball, go around to the second lane. They're every 4 meters apart. And I think I did the math right, and I think I have the correct amount of cones in there. Don called me out on that, the football one. I think we're good here. So you will time, they'll go through it and you time it. We don't have a scoring rule book scoring set yet. We want to see some of the athletes go through it first, obviously, before we can kind of get the points with the scoring. If they miss, sorry, that should be 4 meters, not 5. I'll make sure I switch that too. Biggest thing is they have to control the ball through the zigzags. If they miss a cone, they get a 5-second penalty. So if they go in and out of the cones and they miss one, that's fine. At the end, you just add 5 seconds on to their time. Not at all, nothing crazy about that. They get 1 attempt at this. Do it as fast as they can under control. So this is the fun one. This diagram took me a very long time to do. And I know it looks very confusing. We recorded, we're using this for football as well, flag football. So I do have some videos of a couple athletes demonstrating. So we will be able to show you exactly what it is. I know it looks confusing. Pretty much they run, it's a box. It's a lot of sports call it the box drill. We just kind of changed it up a little bit. We thought about using a sports ladder and the agility ladder. Realized that, well, that wasn't probably the best thing because not everyone has one. But this is Richie. He plays flag football from Frederick. So he's going to demonstrate. Oh, this is like speeding up, isn't it? Richie's not usually this fast. So you can see he missed 2 of the cones. He gets a time penalty on it. We'll go back to that in a second after we watch the videos. But it's just a straight sprint forward. You're always facing forward, okay? Sprint forward, zigzag back and forth, up and down through the cones, back pedal all the way down, and then defensive slide to the side. So this is Dallas. He also plays flag football for Frederick. If this is any indication about how fast Richie's video went, Dallas is a lot faster, so you can see him.
Yeah.
So you can see up and backs, back pedal, defensive slide to the side. Time starts when the coach says go. It finishes once they pass the cone.
The links to the videos are in the lower right corner there. Yeah, the jerkiness of it was a function of doing it through Zoom and such. It's very smooth if you use the link. So when you get the slides, might be a way to show your athletes and your partners and all exactly what's expected.
Yeah, exactly. So these videos will be in there, like Mike said, and we'll have soccer videos. Like I said, I'm meeting with the sports management team, working with Emily Golden from Montgomery County, who is on the sports management team. We're gonna have a couple of athletes from Montgomery, hopefully, demonstrating these. And we'll have Adam Hayes, who is our amazing video guy, out recording these. We'll put a video together so that you can see all of these drills being completed. We wanna make sure everything, since they are so new, that everything is laid out as best as possible for you guys. So most likely, we'll keep these times and scores for footwork. It has been tested with athletes, but again, we're gonna go through it with some of the soccer athletes to just ensure. We might make some switches, we might not. Again, this is all just a draft until we see it done. So give and go. The athlete will start at the start line, which I didn't indicate, but you can see where Mike is pointing. The circles are volunteers. And again, they only can touch it with their feet. So the athlete will kick the ball to the first volunteer. As they kick it, they're running forward. The volunteer passes it back. The athlete will kick it to the next volunteer, which is in the middle. They'll keep running forward, get it back, kick it to the last volunteer, run forward, get it back, go through the cones, and speed dribble back. So their time, they are being timed on this event, and they get an extra point for every good pass and trap that they do during this drill. So besides being besides being timed, they can get bonus points for a good pass and trap to and from the volunteers, because this is really working on their passing skills. So again, my diagrams are a lot of fun. Target shooting. This is the one that Mike was referring to earlier. So the athlete starts at the two cones, and you have a volunteer in the corner. The volunteer will kick it towards where the X is on the field. Obviously, you're not going to have an X on the field, but you're going to kick it to about the top of the box. The athlete will meet the ball, and they must try, or they will try to score between the two sets of cones. And now 4 points, the ball has to roll through the cones. If it goes in the air over the cones, it does not count for the 5 points. It has to roll through. This is working on the athletes, keeping the ball low and in the corners while shooting at the goal. So if I shoot and I score, but I didn't get through the cones, I still get 1 point because I made the goal. So we wanted to make sure that the athletes are still getting points for making goals, because that's obviously the point of soccer. Getting it through the targets on the ground, they get 5 points. And for the very high skilled athletes, if they do a 1 touch into the goal, they get 10 bonus points on top of the 1 or the 5. So you can get some extra bonus points if you can control the ball with the 1 touch. The athlete will get 3 attempts at this. The last skill we have is corner kicks. You have the athlete in the corner, signified by the green star, and you have 3 cones set up, and we'll have complete measurements of these later after we work everything out. But the athlete gets 3 balls to try to hit each target. Now, the big thing is, because I know I would do this, so we're putting a rule on this so people like me can't do this. They have to go in order. So they have to go to the short cone first. They get 3 attempts at the short cone. They then get 3 attempts at the middle cone, which is up at the top, and then 3 attempts at the far cone. They have to go in that order because I know I don't have the best aim, especially with soccer, and I kick it. I'm going for the first cone, but it hits the back cone. Oh, I got it. No, you have to go in that order. So if I hit that 3rd cone, but I'm aiming for the first one, it doesn't count. You get 0
They
for
just
that.
call their shots.
I'm sorry?
They can't call their shots like in pool.
No.
Okay.
They can't call their shots after it has hit the target.
So it's just kind of putting a little bit more on this drill, making it a little bit tougher. But again, they have to go in the order. First 3 balls for the post cone, second 3 for the goal box cone, the last 3 for the far post cone. If they want to go in a different order, that's fine, but make sure they have to say which cone they're going for before they start. So if they want to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's fine, but they have to say it before they kick the ball.
Yeah, and one of the things that just came to my mind, Hanger, I know as coaches you might have already picked up on it, but the one thing we didn't touch on is after they go for the short cone or the near post cone, then you most likely would need to remove that cone to not be interference for the far post cone. So just a thought there, coaches. Again, this is in development draft, so we're putting the final touches to it. So back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and again, we are going through these. We'll make any necessary changes once we see this actually done in person. This was really spent a couple hours one night with the management team going through all these, creating them. For all those that you don't know, the management team, sports management team, consists of Jeff Bailey, who is our new head official. Most of you guys know Tom Bailey. You guys should know Jeff. He's been officiating with us for, I don't even know how long, a long time. His dad, for about 40 years, was our head official. The last couple of years, Bob Lyles took over. Bob had to step down, mainly for work purposes and all that. So Jeff did graciously step up to help us. So we have Jeff Bailey, who are head official, John McDonough. You guys probably all know John from the Harrow County Soccer Leagues at Cedar Lane Park. He also coaches one of the unified soccer teams in Harrow County. We also have Emily Golden. She is the high-level coach for Montgomery County. Her team was selected to go to Seattle with us in the USA Games in 2018. Did amazing out there. They won silver in the toughest division and the craziest games ever. I lost my voice watching them and cheering for everyone, but they did awesome. And our 2 newest members are Frank DeSanti from Anne Arundel County. Most of you guys, I think, know Frank. He's a great coach. He was actually the coach of the 2014 traditional soccer team that went to USA Games. And our last one, our athlete rep, is Frank Stone. I'm sorry?
He was softball.
No, Frank was soccer.
Okay.
Oh,
right. Okay. Anyhow, I'm sorry.
That's good. Our last one, our newest member, is Chris Stone. He is an athlete with Montgomery County, plays for Emily. A lot of you guys probably know him from the dance parties. He is the DJ for our dance parties that we've been having since March. Chris is awesome. Everyone did an amazing job coming up with these. I think Chris came up with half of them. He was really great with this. Everyone was amazing, giving input. So we're really, really excited, giving a huge shout out to all of our management team members that helped come up with these. I couldn't have done it without them. I definitely couldn't do it by myself. They did everything. I was just kind of typing and drawing very bad diagrams in PowerPoint during the meeting. So those are all the new stations. As you can see, they are for higher level. So it is going to be a little difficult. This is the example. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Kathy Zubak just brought up a question, I think, in regarding to the footwork drill with the boxes and the shuffle and everything, is making a look there on not just missing a cone, but some other penalties if they're not doing it correctly. So again, we'll take that into consideration, Kathy. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, I'll work with the management team to get their input on all of this as well. And we'll definitely, so what I'm doing is creating a Word document that goes into more detail on each individual skills station. We'll definitely have all penalties and anything that we come up with on that. What I went through tonight was really just a brief overview. This informational document will have a lot more in detail stuff. So this is the flag football score sheet that I created. I haven't created it for soccer yet because we don't have all the scoring down yet. So as you can see, the one tab is going to have an overview of all the scoring. And then the page that the overview will, this kind of just is like a brief overview of how to score. And then the other page, Mike, if you could go back for me, thank you. This is what we're going to use as the team roster. So anyone that's participating needs to be on this form. You'll submit this. Everything will be calculated for you, just like our team assessment forms are. Correct skill, put the score in, it will be added up for you at the end. After your team completes it, if you do this every week in practice, that's fine. Submit the scores every week to me. That is fine. And I'll post those on the coaches resource page in a big document that I'm going to create as well. One thing that we thought would be really cool was allowing the partners to participate in these as well. We don't want to lose partners because they can't play in the game. We want to still involve them. So I think this would be a good way to have them still involved. So we can allow them to participate still throughout the season. Something that we came up with flag football that I thought was really fun was having a coaches category. You don't have to do it. We just thought it'd be something fun for you guys. You can do the skills and stations as well. Put you guys in your own categories. But if you guys like to participate, make sure you put your name on the roster as well with your score so we can have you in there with your role. But something that we think would be fun. I mean, I know all you guys are competitive. I'm very competitive. I think it could be a really cool thing. So that is all we got. So like I said, once we get the final score complete, I will create the score sheet and send that off to everyone as well. Resources, we're not going to go through these. You guys have seen these all before. Please review them though when I send them out again. These are just the coaching requirements and certifications, all those tables and charts and everything. Coach certifications, code of conduct, the registration forms, all of that. Go through this. I'm not going to because it's a lot of information and we're already at our time limit, so trying to get through this. But for now, is there any questions? I know I went through that very quickly and I apologize. This will be sent out later in the next day or two.
Yeah, one of the questions, and I'm not sure Mike or Melissa, if you could answer it, not in my knowledge of the tech world here. I think there is a way to download these questions that have come up with the skill stations so that the management team can address some of the penalties or some of the questions. So I see Mike's head shaking yes. So Emily, yes, the questions can be downloaded and you can have access to those.
Steve, we'll have that as your professional development for next month. Yeah.
You're teaching
them. Thanks, Mike. One of the things I do want to say is, you know, I see a lot of the, if you're unable to see the chat box, for those of you who are on the management team, there's a lot of coaches saying, thank you and kudos. Great videos, great diagrams, great skills. Looking forward to getting the final documents. So again, I just want to acknowledge the sports management team again for the work putting it forth here and creating something that wasn't expected this year. But again, to get the athletes, partners, and as Melissa said, some of you coaches out there to engage and provide opportunities during this trying time. So again, kudos to the management team and thank you coaches for acknowledging them.
So if there's any questions, if you guys want to raise your hands, we can unmute you, or you can type them into the chat still.
Yeah, just one note also for folks, not a guarantee, but the adjustments and such that Melissa's talking about here, they're expected to be more tweaks than major changes, like what are the exact measurements and, you know, confirming that we're talking, you know, the size of the goal we're using and so on down the line. So if you're starting your practices with your athletes prior to that coming out, you can fairly safely use these, the slides as a guide to start out with that. Again, it may adjust stuff a little bit, but they can get the gist of each of the skills stations as you're going through the practices. One of the things that Melissa, we talked about on flag football that we can do here as well is we can pick a certain point, I don't know, September 1 or September 15th, and then from that point forward, report when in the kind of leaderboard that Melissa's talking about, indicate what each athlete's improvement from that a baseline score would be. So if we pick, you know, whatever their best score is as of September 15th, and then through October or through whatever period, they can see their own improvements so that they're not, so even those athletes who maybe are getting scores that are lower than some others can see some really exciting advancement in terms of them improving their scores.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Another thing,
I think that'd be really cool. It would be nice for everyone to see how they've improved.
Yeah, one of the other things I just want to make sure, and Mike, I do this with acknowledgement of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know when you have a team of 12 or 14, you're going to have to split those into different groups. When they go from station to station, those individuals who are volunteering at that station have to move with that group. So I just want to clarify that. There was one question about that earlier. So when you have your team split into two, they can do multiple stations, but whoever's at that station, they move with the group as an entire group. You don't leave a volunteer back and say, okay, you're in charge of the next group, rotate. Everybody in that given group has to rotate together, including volunteers, so there's no cross-contamination or whatever, again, with the social distancing.
Within phase 1, yes, that would be correct. When we get to phase 2, you can have a group of up to 50. And then there's some stuff, yeah, if you're having multiple groups in phase 1, they need to be physically separated, they need to stay intact, you can't swap people out, and they need to not cross each other's path to a certain degree going around. So, but hopefully things will go really well and we'll be able to move into phase 2 within or individual programs can move into phase 2 in a relatively rapid succession at the direction of the area director. I would just say, echoing what Steve said, big thank you, not just to the sports management team, but to all of you. Thank you for taking some time tonight. And thank you, Kathy, for your tech moment or tech thing there that we can look at for some future webinars there. So appreciate the sharing of the experience. But thank you all. Look forward to seeing you out there at competitions, and again, looking for co-hosts. So excited about the new opportunity and to have some kind of competition for all levels of soccer players.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.